Hello guys, if you're watching my video now, I guess you're interested in implementation of integration solutions. In my channel, I explain how you can implement different integration scenarios with use of Microsoft Azure integration services. In this video, I want to show you how you can implement one of the most important action in every integration solution, data mapping. You will most probably need implementation of data mapping in every integration scenario. And this is not only restructuring, but conversion of source codes to the destination system codes. And I will show you now how we can use a logic app and a simple data mapping technique to convert data block from a source system to a corresponding data block for the destination system, with both restructuring and conversion of codes. Okay, so let's have a look at the example. For instance, we have a JSON message and we need to convert it into this form, which is different. And the difference is in the attribute names. For instance, order ID is named order number. In the destination data, customer ID, customer number, the values will be the same. Total will be named amount. Currency is the same. Payment method will be placed within the payment element and will be named payment method code. So instead of credit card, the destination system will use a code, and inside that system, one means credit card. Payment status is paid, and for the destination system, the attribute will be named status, and the system uses a corresponding code. So again, 74001 means paid, and shipping method will be named shipping code, and the standard means this code in the destination system. A pretty standard scenario, and it's just very much simplified. But I want to show you how it works, how the approach works in the system, in your solution, how to do it by yourself. Let's go to Azure. I have prepared a simple logic app. The logic app with an HTTP trigger. Nothing special here. I just placed the JSON schema, which reflects this data structure, which I mentioned in the beginning. This I will explain a bit later. Then I use a composition block, composition action. And here the magic of restructuring is done. In quotation, of course, the magic. So as you see, this data structure reflects the destination data structure. Since I use the JSON schema in the HTTP trigger, then I can use auto values in this action with this approach. All these fields of the JSON schema are presented in the list, so it's easy to just pick them up from the list and place where we need it. And these three values are actually a bit more complex. Here I use the variable. Let's go back to this variable. As you see, this is a definition of the variable with initialized value. So here I placed the JSON structure where I have three elements: payment method, payment status, shipping code, where the payment method attribute name is the value from the source data, and the attribute value is the value used by the destination system. So here I have credit card and PayPal as an example. Let's check our data example here. So the payment method used here is a credit card. Payment method corresponding code is 1. Here it is, right? Next, payment status. And we can find it here. Payment status paid. Paid this one. And the corresponding value for the destination system is 74002. Sorry, I have to switch. So this will become 2. And the paid is 1. Yeah, paid is 1. These two are just example of multiple values. We will use, of course, different statuses, different codes, and it's not just one single value, of course. Next, shipping method. We have a separate element for shipping codes and shipping methods. So the element is called the shipping code here. And the standard will be mapped to 740052, which is used here. So our task is to take this source data structure, convert it into this form for the destination system, and moreover, make conversion of the values specific to the source system to the values specific for the destination system. As I said, this is a JSON object variable. We can close it. And now back to how this variable is used. As you can see, the variable is called data map. And then I will click here to open the definition of this. So I take the variable data map. I choose the element which I need in particular place. And then here I have to use the attribute name. And I take the attribute name from the incoming data. So again, in this particular assignment, I want to get the payment method code. And the payment method code will be taken from payment method element. No, sorry, I need to go back to the definition of variable. Payment method element, and then the attribute which will be selected by the data which has come to the Logic app. Trigger body is the body of the data of the trigger, which the trigger has accepted. And the payment method is the value of what has come in this attribute. And then this value will return the value of the data map variable attribute. And the same principle is used for each attribute where data conversion is required. So you can find the same approach for payment status. The payment status will be taken from the payment status element of data map variable. And here we will use the attribute name will be taken from payment status, from the payment status attribute of the coming data. Next, the same approach for shipping code. So here I use the shipping code attribute of the data map variable and the shipping method of the incoming data. So as a result, this value will be used as the attribute name. This value will be returned as the attribute value. And here, as you see, the definition will be used in the function. Let's have a look how it works in practice. And for this, I will call the Logic app from Visual Studio by this URL. So I want to copy the URL of the HTTP trigger of my Logic app. And I'm going to use Visual Studio Code and Thunder Client extension. For those who don't know, Thunder Client extension is an extension which works similar to Postman. You can execute API requests right from the Visual Studio Code. So for those who prefer to have all the tools in short availability, you can just install the Thunder client extension and use it to make requests to API, to endpoints, to Azure resources. So I need to switch to the method post. The Logic Apps use post as a method. Then I will send data and I will copy my data example, paste it into the body window, and I click send. The Logic app responded with the status 200, which means OK, and returned me the data structure, which is a converted data, which was created for the destination system. And if we check this, so you can see that the attributes are named according to what was specified in the Logic app, and the values, these values which we see here for payment method code, for payment status, and the shipping code, are not the same as in the data which came to the Logic app. They are from the mapping definition specified in the Logic app. In my Logic app, I have implemented a simple, very simple handling of the error, and the response to 100 will be returned along with the data, will be returned in case the compose output order has been executed successfully. If it fails, the execution will be sent to the response with the status code for 100, which means bad request. And I have defined this in the settings to the action in the section run after. So here, instead of is successful, I have chosen has failed. So this action will be executed only in case of error in the preceding action. We can check the same for the response to 100. This is the default behavior, is successful. So this is assigned by default, but in case of error, I have to set this manually. So as you see, if the composition of the data fails, then the execution will go to the action response for 100, and the Logic app will return for 100 to the client. And I can check this by using, for instance, the payment method, which is not specified in the data mapping. Like this, for instance. And it returned 400 because the value credit card new does not exist in the data mapping. So we can go to the run history of the Logic app and see that the successful execution. By the way, we can check the data composition. So the data composition can be found in here, in the outputs of the action, and we can see the raw data output. So this is the JSON object, and then the execution went to the response to 100, this one, which returns status code to 100 along with the destination system data in the body. And for failed execution, we will find that the composition action failed with the error template language expression, and this is about this expression, cannot be evaluated because property credit card new does not exist. Available properties are, and it gives the available properties. Very comprehensive. And then after failure, the execution went to the response for 100. So this is a simplified example of data mapping in Logic Apps, which you can apply in your solutions. And I can give you a little bonus for this. How usually does it work? Your integration solution consists of multiple ARM templates or Bicep files, whatever technology you use in your integration project. I prefer Bicep, but whatever. Number of files, number of definitions, and how it works. Usually you take from the export template, you will find the entire definition of your logic app, which you can further use in your deployment project. And we can find a trigger here. But in the action, we will find the data map variable with variables input. This data mapping JSON structure which I have defined. So this is a part of the logic app definition. And in order to make changes, you have to open the logic app in your project or make necessary changes. For instance, extend the set of mapping data, or you go to your project and correct this variable, data mapping variable, in the definition of the logic app. But it's not very convenient way of doing changes. And Bicep allows you to make it more efficient. If I go back to my Visual Studio, here is a Bicep file which defines my logic app, this particular logic app in the example. And I have also a JSON file where my data mapping is described. Then I can take this JSON file and include it into the definition of logic app. This is the function. Load JSON content is the Bicep function. So it loads the content of the data map JSON file, and then I use this variable. Further, I will close the trigger in the data map variable. So value, instead of the JSON content, I use just the variable data map, which I initialized right here with the content from the data map JSON. Which benefit does it give me? First of all, it's easier to handle this file, to maintain this file further, to include more mapping elements, to correct if necessary. And also I can reuse the same data mapping object in several places. So for instance, if the same data mapping is required to be used in 2-3 more logic apps, I will just easily load the same source data and use it in the definition of the Azure resource. So it helps me to avoid making errors, to make double work if I need to make changes in several places. So the integration project becomes easier to maintain. And then I will just show you how it works when you need to deploy this. In the real life integration project, you will of course use the DevOps pipeline. And the DevOps pipeline will use the YAML file, which will call Bicep files or ARM templates. But here I will show you just how you can run and execute this Bicep file and deploy the resource into Azure. So you have to use the Azure CLI command, which is called AZ deployment group create. And by the way, you can find this command in the documentation to Azure CLI. CLI is a command line interface. So Azure deployment group create is a command which allows you to run the ARM template or Bicep file, which will result in creation of resources in an Azure resource group. Back to Visual Studio. I use this command. I specify the resource group, and the template file is my Bicep file. So I just click enter to run the command. And now you see it's running. It takes some time to initiate the process. The command is executed. And by the way, I use the parameter logic app name here, and I make a change to the logic app name. So it has created already the new logic app, not update the existing logic app. So if we go to the resource group, we should find 2 logic apps there. Yes. And this one was created by the last run of the Azure CLI command. It has never been executed yet. But the thing to check here is the data map. So we see that as a value, it has got the content of the JSON file, which was referenced by my Logic App Bicep template. So this was my advice to lift up your efficiency in your integration projects, to avoid code duplication, to simplify maintenance of the data in your integration solutions. Feel free to write your questions or suggestions in the comments down below. Ask if you are interested in particular scenarios which you would like to use in your projects. And have a nice coding. See you next time. Goodbye.